All right, Mark, I want to talk about your 4 ETF Canadian retirement portfolio that you put together on your channel. Everyone check out his channel below. You'll see it on the screen probably right now. And also, like always, please use the chapters below. We'll be bouncing around a lot. And also, I'll be putting the ticker below for every single ETF we go over today. So use the chapters, check out the tickers. Mark, thanks for joining me. Let's jump right into this. Your first ETF is ETC, the Evolve Cryptocurrencies ETF. You have this at around 5% of your portfolio. At least you said that in the video. Talk about why you picked that, especially for a retirement ETF. That's the thing I
Yeah.
found weird.
Well, so I wouldn't put that as the first ETF. I would actually put that as the last since it's the smallest allocation. But we can start there if you want. The thesis on including an allocation to crypto is that if you want to maximize potential returns over the long term, it's becoming more and more standard practice to include some sort of allocation to that asset class, even amongst more traditional, more conservative asset managers. But for me personally, as a relatively young guy, very far away from retirement, with a very high risk tolerance, actually, personally,
Mm.
including that just makes sense. And so that ETF that I chose, ETC, is just actually an aggregate of a Bitcoin ETF and an Ethereum ETF, which are the two largest cryptocurrencies by market cap. So it just gives like a small exposure in that portfolio to what is potentially an explosive asset class with big potential. And since I made that video, Bitcoin, for example, has hit new all-time highs just recently. So it's worked out well. Of course, that's no guarantee of future performance, but it's certainly outperformed some of the other ETFs that I included in that portfolio.
Let's hang on that for a second because I'm not the biggest crypto expert. I had a guy called Ron from Ron's Basement. He does gold and silver investing, but he got into crypto meme coins to be specific.
Yeah, I
Hyper
know that guy.
successful. Okay, he's fantastic. He's fantastic, but he's exploded in the meme coin space. So he gave me some education on crypto. I now own some crypto through MSTY and all that kind of stuff, like through like a covered call
Okay.
more strategy. But through ETC, are you just tracking the price of crypto, like the aggregate of like a 60% Bitcoin, 40% Ethereum split? That's just all it's doing, right? So you just track when the price goes up,
Yeah.
it goes up.
ETC
That's
is
it.
it's a product from Evolve, and they also have Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs and ETC aggregate. So it's, I believe it's two-thirds Bitcoin, one-third Ethereum, and it just tracks the price minus the expense ratio, which is more expensive than other types of ETFs, but still quite low.
Do you know what it is roughly at the top of your head? Expense ratio? Is it over like the 0.06%? It's like point 0.2
Oh yeah,
something,
yeah, yeah.
probably.
I think it's not 2%. I think it's 1% or less. But all of the other ETFs included in my little basket portfolio are like 0.05, 0.08, something like that.
So would you suggest this for, because you said you're younger, for younger investors building a portfolio they'd like to retire off of? Or would you also suggest this for someone who is actually 65 and retired and has like a 4 ETF portfolio? Like, how
Well,
would you?
I should probably have led by saying I'm not a financial advisor. None of this is financial advice. And I'm not qualified to advise people on what they should invest in. But personally, as someone like I've been around for a while. I've been in cryptocurrency since like 2017,
On
and
this?
I would say compared to the average person, I have a very solid understanding of the space. And so, yeah, like if you have a higher risk tolerance, you're further away from retirement, then personally, I think it makes a ton of sense. Maybe if you're like 65 years old, 70 years old, you're retiring, or you're already retired, you probably want to focus a little bit more on income producing assets as opposed to assets that fluctuate in price significantly.
Have you been investing in crypto since 2017?
I have, yeah, yeah,
Good for you, buddy. How old are you? How
yeah.
old are you?
I am
Did you don't mind
34
me?
years old right now.
Yeah, I'm 39. Wow, good. That's good. I literally always stayed away from crypto. Sort of my thesis because I didn't quite understand it because it looks speculative. I didn't really like. I didn't understand like what the value was. Like, oh, you can't buy anything with it. So I sort of just stood away because I didn't really get it. I don't think I still quite get it. I'll be honest. Like I try to wrap my head around it. Like we're like, hey, it can't be used to buy groceries. So then that sort of like confuses me. And it only has value when you sell it for cash. So you're back at cash all over again. So like that's the weird. I don't know. That just feels weird to me. But I'm in it, and I'm slowly getting 5% of my portfolio switched over to crypto. So regardless of what I think, I just know that I can't just not be involved in it anymore. So I'm getting involved in it, but small, like 5%. So that's
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Uh,
technically, like on that, uh, it has value in as much as people are willing to pay for it. It's the same as any other commodity, really, that doesn't have a whole lot of intrinsic use, like diamonds, like gold. Only a certain percent of gold is actually like used in manufacturing, and the rest is just a speculative asset.
That's a really good comparison. Gold, because that's all gold is. They just hold it. No one's using it. Well, a little bit, like you mentioned, they're using it for a little bit of stuff, but it's just being held in vaults underground. Ron was saying something. They just dig it up out the ground to put it back in the ground in a nice cleaner vault. That's all it is. That's all gold's doing, right? That's a good way of looking at it, actually. All right, let's move on to the next one. I'm just going to hammer through these four ETFs. VCN, the Vanguard TFSE Canadian All Cap Index ETF. That's interesting. Why'd you pick that one?
So that one is, yeah, tracks the Canadian stock market, the biggest companies in Canada, a couple hundred of them. So I would share that you're buying tiny fractional amounts of all the biggest companies in Canada. And I included that at the time just to increase sort of the geographic diversity of a portfolio. But one thing that I've noticed and I've sort of changed my thinking on a little bit is that investors in Canada are generally biased towards buying Canadian companies, even though that might not always actually be the best option. And that's
Mm-hmm.
probably true of investors in every country, that there's some sort of implicit bias to owning your own national companies, the stocks of those companies. So I did include that in the portfolio for a couple of reasons. One, just to increase diversification uh, across companies, but also across regions. And then two, because over the past few years, the Canadian stock market has actually dramatically underperformed the US stock market and also some global markets. And so the thinking is that since Canada is kind of more heavy on resources and certain specific industries, it's possible that that underperformance could turn around at some point, and you don't want to sort of miss out on that. So, including a small allocation towards the Canadian segment in the portfolio made sense to me.
What kind of percentage would you put on Canada? I'm thinking Canada in general, not even this specific ETF, because there's a lot of ETFs that sort of cover the Canadian market broadly. What
Yeah.
percentage do you put on it normally?
At the time when I made that video, I put way too high of a percentage. I think it's been a while since I published that, and I didn't rewatch it recently, but I think it was like 20% or something in that realm. In that realm. Um, but now I have significantly less of my portfolio allocated to the Canadian market, and I don't think it makes a ton of sense to be overweighted Canada like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I started when I first started investing. I was probably overweighted in Canada a long time ago because I think everyone starts if they come in like just new to investing, you start with a home country bias no matter what. Because I think
yeah,
that's just what you know your country. You're like, okay, great. My economy seems to be good enough. But I probably started at 20 something percent a long time ago. Now I'm at 10 or under 10% in
yeah.
Canada. And I think that's sort of like my non-financial advisor advice that I give to people, me as just a guy who has a marketing background, just a random dude. I say uh, 10%. That's kind of, and I even do that for emerging markets. I go, like developed and we're going to get into that anyways. Developed and emerging markets, I think I put them at like 5% each, like 5% for developed, 5% emerging. But I think there's more wiggle room there than there is just for Canada. I cap that at 10%. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. VIU, the Vanguard FTSE developed all cap except North America index ETF. This is another Vanguard one. I kind of have a little bit. I don't even know why I have a preference for Vanguard, but I do have a preference for Vanguard. Do you have a preference for Vanguard, or that just happened to work out that way that I came
Not
up with
really.
VIU?
And there's other comparable products uh, by like
Yeah,
BlackRock or other ETF issuers that have very much like the same fees. They track pretty much the same exact companies. So it's kind of like doesn't really matter which one you choose. But the reason why I chose this ETF specifically is because it is excluding countries that I didn't want to invest in, like China, for example, but still tracking the global markets, excluding Canada and the US, which already was allocated separately in the portfolio.
That's good. You talk about the China thing. You don't invest into Alibaba or and that's you're not on that train. 'Cause I know
No,
Warren Buffett
no.
increases exposure to China. Any reason why you avoid
Yeah,
it?
just personally, I think the geopolitical risk is too high, and
Yeah.
I overweight that in my decision making because sure, like maybe the price of these Chinese stocks will skyrocket and I'll miss out on some gains. But the risk of zero for non-native investors is too high, in my opinion. That it's basically like a no-go for me. So
That's the exact
yeah,
same reason. I I got pushback on that a little bit. I don't know how, maybe I explained it wrong, but it was 100% the geopolitical, no matter how good it seems. And I just feel, and I'm sure the government has a ton of control over corporations here in North America as well. I just don't like how much control they have over it. Like, Alibaba, Jack Ma, the CEO of
yeah,
Alibaba, he said some, like, that country, that, I don't even know if this video will get flagged now on YouTube. Whenever I talk about China, there's a flag, but it's okay. But like, he spoke out a little bit about like the CPP or whatever it was. He disappears for a year, comes back, and he's been reprogrammed to be like, hey, and he's giving lectures in schools. I was like, what's going on here? You just took a billionaire guy who's the head of a large corporation that was funded by the government. He disappeared for a year because he spoke out and he came back. I'm like, so technically you could have crushed that company, replaced it with another company, put another skin on it. And then what does that happen if you invested in that company in general? Like all that stuff concerns me. It's too much control by government on the corporations, and that's just my sort of outside looking in perspective on it. And that's enough where you're spending a lot of money, not worth investing in when there's other options. Oh,
yeah,
like China's the only thing on the table. But I do know a lot of people who invest heavily into China. I mentioned before Warren Buffett started buying up stuff in China, increasing his position there because he felt like it was undervalued. He was right because when he bought in, it did go up quite a bit, like 30%, a lot of the different stocks. But like I said, it's just weird to know that there's a government that could just turn off the switch for any of those companies at any moment when they feel like it. So that
yeah.
for me is too much. And then tariffs and all that nonsense that you could probably get into that could affect stock price. Who knows? All right. So now moving on to number 4, XUU, BlackRock Canada, the iShares Core S&P 500 US Total Stock Market Index ETF. So right now we have, to summarize, we got some crypto. You should get that. We have Canada. We have all developed countries. We're excluding China. I think India is probably excluded on there too as well, right? Because developed would
Yeah, yeah.
be, it'd be UK, it would be like Australia, all those ones, Germany, all that would be included. And then, all
It's a
right.
lot of
And
Europe
then,
and Asia Pacific, but it doesn't include like Africa, South
yeah.
America, and China, etc.
And then you have the total US market now. So you've covered everything now, essentially. And that's what you're going for this. Talk about that iShares Core S&P 500 US Total Market Index ETF. Why not like a VOO and just do the S&P 500? Too concentrated for you, or you want to be as broad as possible?
Yeah, just so if you buy a VOO, you're getting exposure to the 500 largest companies, which is great. But if you buy the total US market, you're also getting exposure to mid cap, small cap companies. So it increases your diversification from hundreds to thousands of stocks. And the reason why XUU was the largest allocation in that portfolio is because historically speaking, the US has outperformed every other market and has had the best returns over a multi-decade period. Now, of course, that's not to say that that historical outperformance will continue, but it's crazy not to have a major allocation to the U.S. markets in a portfolio like this. So, if I was going to sort of rank these ETFs, I would just go in reverse order of
Yeah.
how we discuss them in terms of like the size of the potential allocation. But yeah,
I think I started with evolve cryptocurrencies to shock the audience. I think I did a little
sure,
gotcha, guys.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
all in.
crypto? What? Retirement? Because I feel like retirement and crypto is like, what? Uh, Let's talk a little bit about the total US market because VOO for the last, I don't know, let's just say 10 years, large cap companies have outperformed small cap. That's why a lot of people went heavy on VOO, VFV. I know I did, but that's obviously not going to stay the trend. Everything just flips on its head every 10, 20 years in the stock market. So do you think it's just maybe a more conservative approach going XUU is just preparing for that inevitable? It's inevitable. These large
Yeah,
companies, there'll be years where they don't overperform, like probably like right now. And there'll be years where small caps come back up, they start overperforming. It's just like not getting too stuck in the current 10-year cycle because we got to look at this at a 20, 30
yeah.
year time frame.
No, it's 100% more conservative, which is why
Yeah.
that's like the retirement portfolio strategy, I guess.
Because
But
someone just
it,
base, sorry, go ahead.
no, well, I was just going to say, like, if you have a really high risk tolerance, you can just YOLO all your money into like the QQQ and just
Yeah.
hope for the best. But
Yeah.
you're going to see a lot more variance and volatility. So it just depends, like, what do you want to see when you log into your portfolio every week or every month or whatever? Do you want to see like a lot of ups and downs, or do you just want to see kind of like steady growth?
That's a hard one. Because if I was 20, I'd be thinking both. I'd be like, I'd love to go up and down. But then if I was 20, I'd like to be able to map out exactly where I'd be in 30 years as well. I'd like the predictability of knowing I'd get like a 10% return for the next 30 years. But then I don't know, maybe that could be 20% over time if I just went the YOLO method. It's like, how much of a gambler are you? I'd probably just go the safer route and then just go focus on other stuff with my life. And just, to be honest, this is, there's like alternatives to everything you're saying here. And like you mentioned before, like there's probably an alternative to ECC that's almost identical that you could find. There's alternatives to VCN, VIU, XEU across the board. There's always like two or three good, almost identical alternatives. But I like the structure of what you did here. Cryptocurrency because you need exposure. Even a guy like me who's apprehensive is now getting exposure to crypto. You got Canada, but hey guys, home country bias. Don't get too much into Canada. Keep it. My recommendation as a guy, like I said, who's just a guy, 10% or so. VIU Vanguard developed excluding China and India. Yeah, that's good. And then XUU heavy on US because US has outperformed every other market for the last, let's say, 8 out of every 10 years. I think that's the stat that's going around. So there you go. And I think when you're investing in XUU, it's ask yourself, will the US become the Roman Empire anytime soon and just crumble in the next 30 years? If you think the US will still be around in 30 years, you're pretty safe with that bet, I feel like. I
Yeah.
want to get into now your sort of how you invest personally, your investment thesis, because you mentioned you started crypto at 17. So what does your portfolio look like? Tell me as much as you feel comfortable talking about it. And like, how do you go about investing? What kind of decisions you make? What are your top sort of holdings that you like to invest in or you're confident in? I want to hear about this.
Right. I got into crypto in 2017, not when I was 17. If I got into crypto
Oh,
when I
I
was
meant to say, I
17,
meant to say 2017. Yeah.
I would be like a multi-billionaire, like retired,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
um, yeah. So actually, like this portfolio strategy that I made this video for, it's not something that I've allocated a significant percentage of my portfolio to. Um, although in the long term, like my plan is to just sort of gradually rotate towards that more passive strategy. But um, my basic thesis is that I want to build wealth. I'm in like the wealth building phase, and for that, I do believe you need to have concentrated investments in things that you're extremely bullish on, that you think have an outsized potential return. If you want to maintain wealth, then diversification is much, much more important. But since I'm young and I'm more focused on wealth building, then I've sort of taken these big risky swings at things that have had the potential to do either really well or really poorly. Crypto being one of the ones that I got into pretty early. Another one is Palantir. I made like dozens of videos on the company on my YouTube channel. I started buying shares of Palantir shortly after they listed in 2020. And then I sort of just DCA'd between 2020 and 2022. Maybe 2023 was the last time I actually bought shares. And so, yeah, like my thesis is generally that you need to have a company that you have high conviction on. You need to be patient, and you need to sort of let your winners ride if you want to be successful in that concentrated bet strategy. And maybe I just got really lucky a couple of times. Um, but if it's luck and not skill, like I'm totally fine with that because it's done well for me.
I want to talk about Palantir. What it You bought Palantir when it went public? I've talked to one other person who bought it when it went public. What did you see in Palantir that made you go, "This is something"? Because I don't like, and describe what Palantir is as a company, what they do, and everything. And then what did you see? Like, what did you see in it? What did I miss? Because it kind of just blended in with every other sort of everyone's excited kind of company. Like, what did you see?
Yeah. So in that year, 2020, uh, Palantir went public, um, and I think it was trading at like $10 a share at the time. But there was like a wave of IPOs that year, and yeah, like it kind of got caught up in the hype cycle. This was the same time as like GameStop and all this other stuff that was going on. And so a lot of people just sort of lumped Palantir into that like meme stock, hype stock category. But personally, I knew of the company for a long time before they even went public, um, because I used to work in the security and the defense space, not like to the level that I had any sort of
Mhm.
like insider knowledge on it, but I was just like acutely aware of this company. So when it went public, I knew roughly what it did, which is like AI data analytics. It's like an enterprise software that's used by companies or by businesses to just like ingest huge amounts of data and provide recommendations on what to do to improve decision making or efficiency or profits, whatever. So when I saw the opportunity, I just thought, yeah, like this is undervalued. I'm going to allocate a significant percentage of my portfolio to this. And I started buying. I bought shares as low as like $6 a share at the absolute trough. And at that time, I remember like my portfolio, my investment in Palantir was down by like 50, 60% at one point. Um, but I wasn't worried because I knew that the company was going to win, and I had the conviction and the patience. And then I just kind of sat on my hands for a few years, and now we see companies trading at 140, $150 a share today. Although I do have to say, over the past few months, I have sold my Palantir position, and I just recently sold the last of my shares at like 142 or something like that, because now the company is just ridiculously overvalued. Like I still
Or
love the
yeah,
company,
yeah.
and I think it's going to be majorly successful in the long run. But from every metric of valuation, it's clearly just like way out in front of its skis, and it's due for a correction. So I can't justify holding it anymore. But yeah,
Yeah, that's a good sell. Yeah, 100%. It is overvalued. Okay, so the main thing there I got is you understood the intrinsic value of Palantir. You had some level, you had insider knowledge because you worked in an industry correlated with it. So me looking outside in, I'm like the securities AI thing. There's just a bunch of fanboys hyping this. This is going to blend in. Everyone's getting excited about something that's unproven. This thing's going to get pump and dump like ride, and then everyone's going to sell. And that's the trap. The trap is the people who sell last. I'm like, okay, that's just what's going to happen. And that's what it looked like. But you, experience in securities and all that kind of stuff and online security or whatever, you kind of go, wait a second, this actually has value. This is needed. This is required. If it doesn't pop off now, it's going to pop off later. And the fundamentals of the company are good. Like it's literally something that you would need, and no one else is probably doing it as good as them or better. So it's just a matter of time until this thing works. Okay. The reason why I'm sort of harping on this a bit is here, all my best investments come from that foundation of I had some level of insider knowledge and understood the intrinsic value of a company that was severely undervalued when other people didn't understand the value fully, right? Facebook is my best example. I work in advertising. So when Facebook crashed in like 2021 or 2022, when it was like whatever dollars, I actually put a ton into it. And now it's out at like however much is that right now, only because I work in advertising. I was looking at it daily, and we're spending millions daily every month. Like every month, we're spending millions. So I go like, oh, and every small business we're reliant on. I knew that there was, and they were so profitable. It was like, this is craziness. So then that's why I could buy in, because I knew that when everybody was selling. You did a similar thing. When you make large bets like that, are you coming from that angle? Like, hey, I know something here that other people don't know. I have some information here. And it's not like you have sneaky information. It's like I work in this industry. I have a deep understanding of it because you invest in Palantir because you understood it deeply. You understand the value of it. Is that how you make decisions? Or do you ever invest like, oh, I just have a good feeling about this or something random?
No, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Investing on vibes. Um,
Yeah.
I
That's
won't
what a lot
say
of people
with
do.
Palantir that I had any certainty,
Yeah.
but I was confident beyond a threshold where I was willing to take a risk. And like, since my focus is on building wealth, I know that I have to take these risks to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to hit a 10x, you're not going to get that by buying and holding the S&P 500. Like you will over a long enough time horizon, but if you want that in sort of like a concentrated time period, you have to be willing to take the risks, um, and you have to have confidence. But like really, the thing with Palantir was patience because I knew that I was right, but if you're right, but you're too early, you're still basically wrong. And I was definitely too early.
Yeah.
So I had to like really bag hold that for multiple years before I was able to actually see the fruits of that.
Yeah. You got an iron stomach. I think that's where everyone falls off because not a lot of people, you said there was like a 50% drop at one point. That would just hurt. And then you have to stare at
Yeah.
it every day. And like, no matter how right you think you are, it's like that's still the reality of the situation. Must have felt good though when it bounced back. You must have felt pretty smart. I would have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would have
For
got a little
sure.
bit cocky. To be honest, I would have. I would have made 15. I would have definitely made 15 videos or whatever you did on Palantir and been like, look how smart I am. Right. I try to tell everyone about my Facebook win every time I get an opportunity because I'm so proud of it. That's a good
The
one.
thing is,
Outside
I
of,
made all those videos before it popped up. And
oh,
since
you're
it's
crazy.
gone like 10x, I think I made like one video doing like a bit of a victory lap. But um, yeah, like I was providing my analysis, my research, and my thoughts on the company when you could literally buy it for $6 a share, and now it's trading for 140. So
That's wild. Do you have any other sort of, are you tech based? I'll lump, yeah, Palantir tech. Are you more into tech stocks or that kind of where you focus when you're doing research and you're looking at stocks?
not necessarily. Like there's definitely a lot of bubble potential in tech.
Oh, yeah, I feel
So
that way.
it like it can be hit or miss, you know. Um, but like I've been in crypto as well, and
Yeah.
I'm I'm just kind of open to anything that has, in my opinion, outsized potential returns. But you have to be careful with these things, and like I don't know, this type of investing, it's like you can make like an investment like every couple of years. It doesn't need to be like every day you're buying and selling. You know, it's just like you need like three, 4 wins in a TFSA in Canada with size, and you're set for life. Like that's all it takes. And you can
Thank you
do
for
that
saying
over a lifetime, you know? It doesn't have to be fast.
that's so good. That's a really good way of saying 3 or 4 wins in your TFSA. That's not the trick, but that's how you do it. That's how that's how I've been doing it. Like a couple really big wins that happen years apart. Like I'm just looking for that one big, I'm not gonna say bet, one big investment that gives you that like 5 to 10x return. And that's how you take your TFSA into those 7 digits pretty fast comparative. You don't wait 30 years anymore to get that result. Because I've had a lot of people ask me like, how is your TFSA getting so big? It's like kind of what you just said. I always get a little bit weird talking about my TFSA because like CRA and stuff. So like I don't know, I just get weird about it. But like that's how you do it though. Um, my question, I want to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin. Where do you see a coin? Because you said it just hit an all-time high. Do you continue? Like, what's it at right now? If you know off the top of your head.
Uh, I track Bitcoin in US dollars.
Yeah,
I actually track like most of my investments in US dollars because Canadian dollar is, kind of worthless. But
yeah.
Bitcoin right now is like 108,000 US dollars for one Bitcoin.
So could it be a million in the next 5, 10 years? Like
I
that's what I'm
mean,
wondering.
maybe some people think that it could be. If that situation were to unfold, it would likely be because of a combination of like massive inflation as well as new buying pressure, not just like price go up. Like
Definitely.
inflation plays a big role in that.
I feel like inflation's played a big role in all the prices of everything going up. Like I feel
Well,
like the whole
yeah.
market I feel like the whole market's been crazy the last 5 years because of inflation. It's everything whoop, and you look at inflation, it's the same trend. Um, you said okay, market buying pressure and inflation. So inflation, yes, market buying pressure. What do you mean by that? Is people feeling like they have to buy into Bitcoin and miss out on the boat, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Like just every day now, there's new opportunities for people to enter into cryptocurrency and new entrants. So, like in the US, they launched a couple of ETFs last year, which was groundbreaking. Like we've had them in Canada actually for a long time, but in the US, they just finally got regulatory approval. So that means now that every American citizen can now access these products in their, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, whatever. Institutions are allocating more towards them, and then also like sovereign countries are actually buying Bitcoin, and we're seeing this as a trend. It sort of started like really niche and small with like El Salvador, but the U.S. has a lot of Bitcoin. China has Bitcoin. Saudi Arabia, like it's becoming more of a thing for countries and companies to want to hold some of this on their books as like a treasury asset. So there is increased buying pressure for sure.
Yeah, the US started buying up a bunch. I don't even know if this is true. They're buying up seized Bitcoin. That's what they have a
Yeah,
lot of.
the U.S. has never actually purchased a Bitcoin, to my knowledge, but they seize it through like asset forfeiture when they catch someone that
Yeah.
has acquired Bitcoin through crime, and then they just keep that.
El Salvador, they're the first one. That's one I heard about years ago. They just have it as a treasury asset. They didn't use it as some sort of currency of some sort. I feel like I just heard through the grapevine, like, hey, they're actually using it as like a form of payment. I just don't know how that worked. So can you explain a little bit what El Salvador did? And then also, I just want to hear your thoughts on will it ever be able to be used as a actual form of currency or the foundation of some sort of currency that we could,
Okay, so to the first point, El Salvador has actually adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. It's their second currency. So
cool.
technically, like when you go to El Salvador, you should be able to buy things with Bitcoin. But to your second question is like, will it become a widespread method of payment? I mean, maybe, but in my opinion, likely not, because I don't think that it's actually the best, most practical cryptocurrency for payments. Um, Likely, what we'll see is something called stable coins, which is like a cryptocurrency pegged to a dollar or a euro or something like that, will become much more widespread for actually, like, say, going to a coffee shop and buying a cup of coffee or something like that. It's more likely that instead of paying with Bitcoin, you'll just like pay with a crypto wallet on your phone, just like Apple Pay, but you're paying with stablecoin cryptocurrency.
I'm just talking out of my ass right now, and so this might not make sense. Because you said peg it to a dollar, okay, but you're trying to get away from the dollar when you're using crypto. You don't want to be tied to like these banks and this all this centralized banking and everyone controlling everything. Could you peg a stable coin to the price of Bitcoin?
Yeah,
So it's and that's it, because that's how money
right.
used to work. It was pegged to the price of gold before they messed everything up, and that was what kept things honest.
Yeah, there's stable coins that are collateralized by all kinds of different assets. Um, and some of them do use like Bitcoin or Ethereum instead of fiat currency as like the backer. But like Bitcoin is, in my opinion, the easiest way to think of it is like digital gold. Um,
Yeah.
but when it comes to like paying for things, like you're not going out with like a little pouch of gold coins. Like you're just going to use the currency that everyone is familiar with, which is dollars, euros, pesos, whatever.
But that's how money used to work, though. Back in the 19th century, early like 1900s, before I think Woodrow Wilson passed a bill. I think it was Woodrow Wilson, but it was the dollar, the paper money we had was pegged to the price of gold. So that's the value that sort of stopped a lot of problems from happening until he eliminated that, and you could just start printing money because it wasn't pegged to anything, but it was the dollar was directly correlated with the gold, and that kept things honest and stopped things from getting out of control. As soon as you remove that, then inflation and all this crazy stuff happened to how we see it today. And if Bitcoin is literally digital gold, and then you have a stable coin, that's for me, my brain is saying that's the exact same thing, the same system that they used at the 19th century that worked so well until they eliminated it. Why not just replicate that and lean into that? I Is that like, has anyone talked like that to be like, hey, this is like the answer to questions that I always have? Because when I see that, I go, oh, that solves a problem that I've always had of like, can you use it as a currency? Well, yeah, you can if you use Bitcoin as the thing, the gold, and then you use stable coins as now the actual currency you're using that you're pegging it against. Has that ever been like a big thing people get passionate about, or am I just not seeing a bunch of problems that stop that from happening?
Well, no, like hardcore Bitcoiners are people that believe like, Bitcoin is sovereign money and it's like the only way that you can avoid the tyranny of central banks and governments and inflation and all that. Um, but realistically, I don't see a world where central banks will allow their position to be usurped by a decentralized currency. And so, yeah, like it's possible we see on some smaller scale, like private companies that launch currencies backed by Bitcoin, but at like a national, international level, at least like in the short to medium term, it's not something that I see. But stablecoins, like they're behind. Like even the U.S. government now is like passing legislation to allow stablecoins and to increase like issuance because they think that it makes the U.S. dollar more dominant globally. So for like the natural path forward, uh, that's sort of the route that I see over the next little while.
Do you think stable coins then stable will become legal tender in the next 10 years? Because gold and stuff isn't. Obviously, Bitcoin isn't legal tender. Do you think people could just use like a stable coin that's tied to the US dollar and just like tap
Yeah, I
away?
mean, basically, it is. It's no different than like
I feel like it's just like using a
having,
credit card.
yeah, or like having money in your PayPal account.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
just
it
like a
sounds like.
digital dollar that like you're trusting that the issuer of it, like let's say PayPal, for example, is got to
They pay
honor
for it.
their obligation. But like the issue is that now the U.S. wants to make sure that issuers of stable coins are meeting certain regulatory requirements. So they can't be like based offshore and doing sketchy things with deposits. They have to be like actually regulated.
Because you know a lot about crypto, I'm just gonna keep asking you crypto questions here because I feel like you can answer a lot of these for me that I just had forever. What that guy who created Bitcoin,
Yeah,
Satoshi something, is that his name, Satoshi, or am I just being a little bit
that's his
stereotypical?
pseudonym, Satoshi
Okay.
Nakamoto. No one knows his
Whoa.
real name.
Okay. Now, is that even a real guy? Because I read some conspiracies on Reddit, because that's the best place to get information is conspiracy threads on Reddit. Is that, hey, you guys might think that Bitcoin is not free from big banks and stuff, but Satoshi is really just a giant big bank that created Bitcoin to control you in another way. Could that be it? Because if no one knows who it is, couldn't it just be literally just owned by the London bank or something, or some Swedish banking company? Like it could just be owned by a large corporation and we nobody has any idea and they're just laughing at everybody and they just found another way to sucker everybody for another 40 years
Yeah.
till everyone finds out.
I think it's unlikely, but yeah, sure it's possible. I've seen conspiracy theories that it was launched by the CIA,
That's
by
probably what I heard.
like
Yeah.
whatever, could be anyone at this point, and we don't really know. Um, and if that
The
was to happen, like if it was to actually come out that it was launched by a government entity as sort of like a Trojan horse, then the whole system would come tumbling down and trillions of dollars would be erased, and that would probably kick off like a global recession slash I don't know what.
So we really don't want if that were true to come out, but then why would it be unlikely if nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamura is and he's just a phantom? Like, is there even evidence this guy was born? 'Cause that's not even a real name, right? So that's just a figure with a profile pic, and
Yeah,
it's not even a picture of a face. It's just like a black shadow. So technically, there's nothing on. This is a mystery. It could literally be. It could be me. I could be Satoshi. It could be that. Like, isn't that just as likely though? Technically,
yeah, I think you're probably too young to be Satoshi Nakamoto, but it's possible that it's not even an individual. It could be like a group of
a
people
group.
that work together. But like, there's a lot of research because people have really like spent a
Oh,
lot of time digging into this that suggests like it was someone that was like based in the Bay Area at like a certain time because like they checked like the timestamps of when this person logged into the Bitcoin forums and was posting and they like compared like the syntax of the writing style. So like they kind of narrowed it down like a little bit, Um, but in terms of who it literally is, uh, it's not clear at this moment.
So they were engaging with the community. It was actually someone had a little bit of back and forth. It wasn't just
Oh yeah, yeah.
uh
The creator
that's
of
changing it.
it like was regularly interacting with early community members and then just went silent at one point. And the reason like why it's actually a risk if he or she or they was to ever return is because they have I think it's 1 million bitcoins, if not more, in like their OG wallet. And obviously like that represents a massive amount of money. So if that was to ever be activated and moved or sold, like that would just be like the kill switch for crypto, basically. So it's actually better if this person never returns, never touches
Yeah.
their Bitcoin and just like rides
So
off into the
best
sunset.
best case scenario is if Satoshi got hit by a bus and no
Yeah.
one ever found out. It's
Yes.
morbid, but it's the best thing for the economy.
Yeah.
Poor Satoshi. No wonder he doesn't want anyone. I honestly think it's that. Why would you want anyone to know who you are when you're holding the largest bag? He went silent, or she, or whatever, went silent before Bitcoin blew up. Correct? It was like way early on, or was it during the rise? Was there some sort of momentum building? I wonder why. Because I'm trying to break down the psychology of like, could this be a person who's just dipping out because they're like, wait a second, this puts a giant target on my back if I'm the person holding this for a million different reasons. Like you would never want to be that person and have people know who you are.
Yeah. I don't know the exact year when Satoshi disappeared, but it was is well before like it became really part of like the common psyche. He just made
Yeah.
it reach a certain level where he thought like there was enough other people into it and mining it so that it was decentralized and that it would survive without him.
That's crazy. I well, thanks for giving me that little knowledge drop of Satoshi and answering my questions. I want to talk a little bit about you though, 'cause you're an interesting guy. You seem really intelligent. You seem really well read. What do you do outside of YouTube, and how did you get into YouTube? I want to know about this a little bit. Like, are you in analytics of some sort for your career? You said you did some security work, but I feel like I'm just gonna just guess. Like, are you in data analytics of some sort? Do you have a job requiring computers where you're looking at spreadsheets and data and analyzing? Are you doing that, or are you just like a personal trainer and I'm way off? Like, what are you?
Neither. Definitely not a personal trainer. But no, I don't work in data analytics. Um, I have a master's in international relations, and I studied like AI arms race. That was like my thesis. So kind of
Okay.
kind of related, but like I'm not a data guy.
Are you really, so you're really knowledgeable about AI and where that's going, correct?
I was, but then like over the past few years, I've been focusing more on investing and
Crypto.
stuff. And I started my channel during the pandemic as just like a hobby out of boredom.
Yeah, but you're doing really well now. I'm looking at here, it is pretty accurate, 21,000 subscribers.
Yeah, and I don't post that much anymore. I really should post more often.
You definitely should. And remember, guys, everyone check out his channel. It's in the description and first pin comment. Um, are you still doing that career then, the one that you have right now? Foreign, say that one more time. Foreign.
Foreign affairs or international
Yeah.
affairs, no. Like I did work in the field for a little while, but now I am self-employed. I make money from YouTube and from other other sources, let's say, because that YouTube channel is kind of dormant, the Mark Farfan one. But I do have some anonymous ones that like I won't say the names that also do quite well.
Nice. So you have the YouTube algorithm dialed in. You know how to create sort of successful channels and monetize them and go through that whole strategy, right? Because that's a business in itself. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've done pretty well on YouTube over the past few years. It's been good to me.
I'll pick your brain a little bit about AI just because I know you don't follow it anymore. Does it affect your day-to-day life in any way? Do you see it impacting, like you're automating YouTube, well, I'll just say automating YouTube. You're mass building YouTube channels. A lot of that's being AI generated content getting pumped out. People are doing that with shorts for YouTube channels, AI avatars where people do explainer videos now with AI people, like fake girls who just like give a 10-minute explainer or something, and they're getting like 1 million views. Do you see that impacting what you're doing? Because like you're heavy in the YouTube game. Do you think that something you're at risk there, or are you just adapting?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know if it will ever completely replace genuine creators because people, at least at this point, can definitely tell the difference. Although you can now use AI to like write the script, to do a voiceover, to create like a storyboard or like just like a B-roll video, or you can use these new video models like VO to literally
Yeah.
create AI videos, which is kind of insane. But I think there will always be a demand for like a genuine human content from trustworthy sources, and at least for the short to medium term. Maybe if these models get to a level where it's indistinguishable from a real person, then my job will be completely obsolete. But before we reach that level, yeah, I think like people can tell the difference and they do like hearing from reliable, trustworthy people that they find credible, you know?
I had a theory on that. A few days ago, I interviewed the CEO of a company called Autonomous Minds. They're based out of
Okay.
Europe, and Autonomous Minds builds AI products, AI software. So, like, this guy is the leading. He knows everything about it, and he said the same thing you said. He said, in the end, people want authenticity. They want to talk to real people. I said, he was 34. He's your age, right? So he's still younger than me, but we kind of still come up from that same generation of like, you probably remember no cell phones. You probably remember slower internet. You probably played outside, right? And probably
Yeah.
drank from the hose outside, played in the sprinklers, rode around your bicycle, all of that stuff, human connection, authenticity. What do you, but I wasn't so on board with that. I said, well, I feel that way, but our brains are warped to think that's our reality. But if you're a 10-year-old being born into the age of AI, social media, whatnot, the idea of what social connection is different. AI avatars, AI everything is the norm. It's weird. Ew, gross to see. Like, I probably look disgusting to them. Like, ew, what, like brown guy who hasn't shaved with gray hairs and stuff. It's like, no, only people who'd probably watch me would be people 30 and above, right? Because they're like, oh yeah, that's more nostalgic. That feels authentic. But people lower than that would be like, no, we want polished, clean, all that kind of stuff. And then the only people who would be into whatever this is would be people who are the hippies of their time. The same people who go up to Alaska and live in a cabin, the people who escape and want to be away from society, it'd be those people. But also going off on tangent here, my theory was the dopamine would be the same. The same way if I were talking in person, I'd love it. I could sit with you, talk to you in person. You'd be more engaging than this. I'd be like, great, even more interaction. I get more of a dopamine release than I get even now because that's the ultimate connection for me. But people born into that, their brain would be releasing the same amount of dopamine just seeing an AI avatar or just sending a text. They probably get it to their friends. Then in person communication because that's all they know. So it's like, have you heard that analogy? The people who live in a dark cave and they see a ray of light, they just think the ray of light is nothing because they only know the dark cave around them. That's their universe, but they don't know the ray of light leads to entire planet, the universe. They have no concept of that. I feel like they'll have no concept of what drinking from a hose is, on a bicycle, no internet, hanging out in person all the time for everything. When I would meet up with a friend in high school, I'd be like, hey, James, meet me at the gas station at 9 p.m. on a Friday night. If James didn't meet me at 9 p.m., I didn't know what happened to James until Monday morning. James could have died. I had no way of contacting him. Like all of that stuff. What do you think about that tangent? Like, do you think I'm off base or I'm not giving enough credit to people growing up?
Hmm. Honestly, I'm more optimistic. I feel like that's a very pessimistic outlook on the future, where basically we just become slaves to technology and we live like it's Plato's allegory of the cave is what you referred to. Like we just
That's what
sort
it
of
is.
um, personally, I'm a bit more optimistic, and I think people will always want to have like a genuine human connection. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe younger generations just grow up completely brain rotted and they don't have that. But at least we'll still have a market of people from our generation that want to watch our type of content and have like real experiences. So,
Here's how I view it. In 10, like a decade ago, maybe, yeah, I used to do consulting for this company. They had a lot of their advertising spend for newspapers, and nobody was reading newspapers. This is when newspapers were dying, but they're still doing really, really well. Want to know why? 65 and above still were doing newspapers, and they weren't going on the internet. They weren't doing anything. That until that market dies, I go in my car. I still turn on the radio. I don't sync it. I don't sync my Bluetooth with my car. I just listen to the radio. I'll sit through the commercials because I'm hardwired. I'm old. But like my thing is like, am I being pessimistic? Because I still said the dopamine in their brains is the exact same, which means internally they're just as happy as me. It's just the version of connection looks completely different. Me as an old man goes, oh my God, poor kids. They're not even talking to each other or seeing each other face to face. But hey, man, they couldn't be, they're as happy as they can be because that's just what their normal is. The brain doesn't know the difference. And we see it now. Have you seen that? So there's a social media post that was going around and it just basically edited out people's phones in their hand in different locations and people look psychotic. They're just like looking at nothing and they just stare at it for like an hour straight. And that's happening right now to our generation. My mom, who's like 80, it's like everyone's already in this trap. We just don't know because we're all in it. And I'm sort of distant from the younger generation. So I think they're the weird ones, but we're all already a bunch of weirdos. We're already just like stuck in, we're all, the brain rot's already happening. It's all already happening, but the dopamine's being fed to our brains. I'm in advertising. There's a ton of dopamine. I'm sending it to you every single day, right? That's what we do, right? So like, I just think, and then with VR, I like VR. I'm huge into, I got the MetaQuest headset. I put that thing on when I'm lazy on a Friday night. I watch like UFC and stuff sometimes. So you can watch it with friends in VR. I can't go to Victoria. I live in Vancouver. I can't take the ferry over to my friends, put the VR headset, they're kind of around me and we're all talking, chatting, and we're watching the UFC pay-per-view. That's
I
like
mean,
close
that's
enough.
a really cool use case for sure. But if that becomes the norm for like every aspect of life, then society will just cease to exist at some point. Birth rates will go down, and we will just have a dwindling population, and that will be it.
But we already do have a dwindling population. I've been bringing on so many experts in every space. I brought the AI guy to talk about the AI and where it's going, so I could like save my dumb theories to him. The dwindling population. I had a longevity expert on. Populations are dwindling across the board already. So even China is suffering a lack of population and they don't have enough backfill for their workforce. So they're reliant on AI and robotics to fill that workforce. Canada, I think, had one of the lowest population years. They rely on immigration. I don't know how the US is doing, but I know Germany, Japan, everybody else, the population is already dwindling. I feel like convenience, if a human beings like convenience, if you make it accessible enough, like when AI came out 12 months ago, I remember I was scrambling going, oh, I better learn AI for my marketing. So in 5 years, I don't fall behind. In the last 12, because I'm like, it'll be integrated in everything. In 12 months, it's already integrated in a way that I thought would take 5 years. Legitimately, it's like, I don't even know how to operate my company if I didn't have AI handling so much different stuff. And I could have never imagined me having that thought 12 months ago. So now, the main reason why is because they made it so convenient and so easy, right? Like the headset, I put it on, but I'm a guy who understands there's all better alternative. But if you were born with the equivalent like of a headset and that's how you interact, would you even consider going out and actually hanging out with people and doing stuff if that's all you've ever known? I don't know where I'm going with this. I just want to see what you have to say about it.
Well, I mean, what you're saying now kind of leads into my next big swing in investing, which is robotics, not AI, but robotics. Because if what you're describing is true, then more and more people will just like not leave the house, and we will have to have replacement for like physical labor and physical tasks. And I think robotics is is sort of like the next wave of that. So I'm looking pretty heavily into that and making a big swing in that space soon.
Yeah. Okay. And so I guess that's where I was leading with it because everything I look through the lens of an investor. So the reason why I bring longevity experts on, robotics as well, because those are the areas I'm pivoting my investing into. Because I'm going, what in 20 years is going to be dominating everything? I don't think people want, I think if population is going down, people live longer as well. That's the alternative. We don't die when we're 80, we start dying when we're 120, right? Okay, so look, and longevity is turning it to a I think there was like $40 billion dumped into it last year. And then it's like doubling every year. I'm like, okay, that's bioscience, regenerative cell therapy. I go, that's why I brought that guy on. Robotics and AI. I go, wait a second, the convenience factor is happening now. Lower population, we need the AI and robotics to fill the fold. So people are start wondering now, why am I bringing these guys on? Because I'm educating myself on these fields. What's the quickest way to educate yourself is bring on the smartest people on the planet and talk to them about it. And then you start figuring out what companies are leading the way and you start investing into it. So if you're interested in robotics, probably pretty soon I'll have like a robotics expert on and we'll talk about it. And then you can just get some information about that as well. Cause I'm sort of on the same trend as you. It's like, do you do that a lot in your investing? You go like, hey, what do you think the world will look like in 10 years? And sort of looking at companies now that are sort of getting traction in that area and be like an early investor. Cause that's personally, that's my obsession right now is that like the 10, like what's going to be big in 10 years. And I'm only focusing on that right now, other than dollar cost averaging and my basic ones I always invest in. Like that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, for sure. That's the only way to get outsized returns. Well, not the only way, but from my perspective, the best way. Because I don't have the skill set to like dig through, old undervalued companies to see like, Warren Buffett's like, oh, can I just like find a company that has like, more assets on the book and then we'll be able to like squeeze a bit more cash flow. Like I'm not really into like that type of investing. I'm swinging for the fences kind of thing. So yeah.
Would you say you have a pretty high risk tolerance then? Because
Oh
your
yeah.
age too, like, yeah, you're 34 and you started you crypto. So
Being in crypto has made me impervious to emotion when it comes to volatility. Like I can stomach like 90% down in my portfolio and like
that's
I'll
wild.
be fine. You know what I mean? Like I've
That's
seen
crazy.
some things that prepare me for pretty much anything. So like when the S&P drops like 10%, everyone in traditional finance is like running around like chickens with their head cut off. And I'm like, 10%, this is a dip for ants.
Yeah, yeah. That's a little bit of a superpower. I feel
Yeah.
like because 90%, I couldn't even say 90%. I think I can stomach 20%. I don't even flinch 100% because if I own it, I don't even care about 20% because like it'll be fine. It's probably stable. 50%, then I'd be like, oh, that kind of hurts because I don't think I'd expect it at 50,
Yeah.
but I'd still hold. If I bought it, I bought it for a reason. 90%, you're a wild man. That's,
Well,
I feel like,
I mean, that's extreme. That doesn't happen with like my larger investments. Like if Palantir had gone down 90% from when I bought it, I might have been pretty sad.
do you ever have to catch yourself before you make an investment being like, wait, I need to think about this a little bit longer? I'm too desensitized to risk where I might be moving too fast and not even realize it. Like I've had that problem where I've been moving money, be like, wait a second, wait, this is a lot of money. Why am I making a decision so quick? Am I making it quick because I'm so sure? Like, is it just everything adds up? Or have I just got so used to making decisions quickly that I don't realize that I'm making a bad one? And you got so used
Yeah.
to making high risk moves that you don't realize. Do you think about that?
No, it's definitely a trap. And it's something that I'm conscious of for sure. And another thing that I'm very conscious of is the fact that I could have just been lucky in the couple of big wins that I've had so far. And like I know that over a lifetime, I'm not going to outperform the stock market. Like, but if I can get it's like I said, 3 or 4 big wins in the TFSA, like I'm set for life. But yeah, it like I
Yeah.
feel like when everyone gets their first big win, they start thinking, oh, like I'm so smart. This was inevitable. But no, like that's not the case. And I'm very, very conscious of that.
There's no sure bets, obviously, investing. And if you do everything right and everything like checks every box, you did all your due diligence, you could still like something could just happen and the stock just plummets. But I feel like with the Palantir thing, like as much as you can control the outcome, you were pretty spot on with that. I think you hit the nail on the head where you said you were just a bit early on it, which is
Yeah.
fine. And you just had the stomach for it. That's a weird thing. Most people would have been early on it and they would have sold it. I'll be honest. And they'd been like, what the hell? I think it was a weird mix of your personality type and being right. Because you could have been right, but you would have sold. You were right and you had a stomach for it, which was the winning combination there. But then also when you mentioned you're talking 3 or 4 big wins, I think you have framed it properly. You're not now seeking the next one right away. You're going, wait a second, this is a weird scenario where enough things lined up, and this is a freak show event, right? And I think I mentioned that on my channel a couple times. I'm like, yeah, I'll go like 2, 3 years between massive investments like that, just because they're just so rare. If they miraculously popped up in sequence, that's another thing, but that hasn't happened to me yet. It's always been years. Like such crazy thing has to lined up for me to go, oh, this is it. And then that's that big win where you see your TFSA just like explode. Um, so like you mentioned robotics, you're leading into obviously you're so big on crypto. You're going to slowly transition into a more passive portfolio. I think like all of us as you get older, something more stable, something to maintain income. Is your plan in retirement then to transition into an income orientated portfolio leveraging high dividends and all that kind of stuff? Are you going to follow the traditional path? Because like I love your investing style, man. Honestly, I'm probably gonna. By the way, everything we're talking about, like robotics, crypto, a lot of this stuff, is this on your channel? Can I find more about this? Because I do want to follow up more about how where you've been going. Can I go down a rabbit hole on your channel with some of this stuff?
A bit. I haven't posted any content on robotics yet because that's like what I'm actually looking into right now. But I will at some point. So
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes, I'll be looking out for that kind of stuff because I'm gonna be using you as a resource. Now that I have a really good understanding of like what you kind of look at and stuff, I'm sort of just gonna, and that's what I suggest people do, like getting a sense of how Mark and like how you invest, things you look at, peg him as that resource. Great. When you got questions, just go to his channel. Um, so that's that. So are you, so what I was getting to was, I know where you're at right now with your investing strategy. I think a whole nother conversation is how your career and how you monetize channels, but that's too much for one episode. Because I think that's a whole nother animal. Are you going to transition then into an income oriented portfolio? Hypothetically, what does that look like in your brain? What do you have benchmarks that you're trying to reach of like a monthly yield? If you're even looking at that, like what does your retirement look like? Essentially is what I'm asking.
I'm not looking at that anytime soon. Like, maybe 30 years from now, I consider transitioning to a portfolio that holds like bonds and dividend aristocrats, whatever. But like right now, I'm focused on growth completely. So that's not even on my radar. Um, if I've reached like a level where I'm like, okay, I'm set for life, and if I invest this, I can live off the dividends, then I'll reassess. But not there yet.
But you're 34, you're doing a lot of stuff. I just feel like when I look at you, I go like, okay, that's a guy who's gonna have an early retirement. That's the vibes you're giving me. It's like, oh, you're
Yeah,
smart, you're capable. Like I don't see you, like I just don't see you as someone who works much longer. Like not like, like you just making enough money
like
right now. And you're just kind of
I
doing it
don't I
because you
don't
want
work
to.
that much now, anyways. Like
I know, but you've
I
sort of
don't
like
work
you're
nearly as
figuring
hard
out,
as I should. But
which is perfect. No, that's good. That's a good thing, by the way.
retirement for me doesn't look like just sitting around all day and like
Yeah,
fishing. I don't
yeah.
think so. I could see myself like dabbling, you know, even after I'm technically retired or I've reached like a financial level where I'm completely independent.
But do you have a number in mind where you're like, hey, now, because like I get what you're saying. It's not just you like sitting around doing that. You're still be doing a lot of probably the same stuff. But do you have a number in your mind? And it's not really good to always put a number, but just so I can get a sense of where you're headed. Where you go like, it'd be nice if I could just have enough FU money by this age, or I can just continue to do my YouTube thing, continue to keep investing, basically do exactly what you're doing, but just not have to ever really worry too much about maintaining your lifestyle, your cost of living. Do you have a
Yeah.
number you're trying to hit?
I haven't actually like written it down or thought about it that much, but like a few million in a TFSA in Canada is I think all you need, unless you really want like a luxury lifestyle. But if you have like 3 mil, 5 mil in a TFSA in Canada invested in like, a diversified conservative portfolio, you're set for life. Like you can do whatever the hell you want. So that's a reasonable target, I think.
What is your lifestyle like? Like, are you someone who's frugal? Or are you someone who's a little bit fancy on things? Do you like to like splurge on dinners? Like, do you have vices in that sort of way where you have to spend a lot of money, or like do you like to live lavishly? Like, how do you operate?
No, I don't live lavishly. I live quite modestly. Um, but like, I spend money on food and travel and things that I like to do. I hate the concept of like extreme frugality to retire early
Yeah,
because like what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow kind of thing, right?
100%.
So like I spend my money when I want to, but I don't live a luxury lifestyle and I'm not really looking to.
I think there's moments you should have extreme frugality, and that moment is when you're severely in debt. Shut it
Yeah.
down. Shut it down. Get super frugal, and just get that shit paid off. But as soon as you're out of that, then reassess. I forgot who I was talking about. Then just reassess like what makes you happy. You said travel, eating out. Do that as much as humanly possible, right? And then just sort of skim on the shit you don't care about. Like, oh, you don't care about buying like the fanciest clothing and stuff. It's like, okay, great. Just cut down on that because you literally doesn't make a difference to you. So why would you? You don't like a fancy car? Great. Use that money on like going to like Fiji for a month or something instead, right?
Yeah.
Are there places you like traveling, like specific spots, or just like all over?
I've been all over, and I'll just continue to travel. So there's not like necessarily like one specific spot that I just keep going back to.
Are you a backpacking kind of guy? You just throwing a
No, no,
backpack
no,
and
no. I used to be. Those days are behind me now. I'm.
really?
I will no longer stay in a hostel dorm room with like 16 other people. Those days are
Wow.
well behind me.
My brother-in-law does that. He'll go to South America and he'll just travel up and down the coast surfing and he'll follow like the tides. And he's been doing that for like 4 years. And he's got hair down to here and he just like surfs and he lives on a tent on the beach and he just goes up and down. He just that's what he does.
Hey, that's a chill
He
lifestyle.
couldn't be happy
Like,
couldn't be happier about it. One of the happiest people I know too, by the way. He's like
if I wanted to live like that, honestly, I could do it right now and retire and
uh,
not work another day because you can live on like $10 a day probably. So,
my I'm pushing him to start either like a coconut stand or something so he can do that, or he's contemplating making an avocado farm or something and just doing that. That'd be wicked. So so what are your plans then for the future? Like anything that we can look out for you? Obviously you said you're gonna start posting more on the YouTube channel, possibly more robotics. What can I look out for when it comes to you?
yeah, I'm gonna put some more videos out on like my next big move, which is going to be coming like this year, I think. I'm looking at the options and hopefully some more content on like ETFs and that sort of thing. But yeah,
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you talking with me today. I think it was really insightful. I learned a ton. You answered a lot of my questions about crypto, so I really appreciate that. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, Mark.